Once again I was bathed in light, and there stood my mother, loving, caring as she always was, with a comforting hug and a calming words which eventually subdued my hysteria. Of course, she asked what was wrong, but I could not say. I dared not to say. I simply said one word over and over again: nightmare. This pattern of events continued for weeks, if not months. Night after night I would awaken to the sound of rustling sheets. Each time I would scream, so as to not provide this abomination with time to prod and feel for me. With each cry the bed would shake violently, stopping with the arrival of my mother, who would spend the rest of the night in the bottom bunk, seemingly unaware of the sinister force torturing her son nightly. Along the way I managed to feign illness a few times, and come up with other less than truthful reasons for sleeping in my parents' bed. But more often than not I would be alone for the first few hours of each night in that place, the room where the light from outside did not sit right, alone with that thing. With time you become desensitized to almost anything, no matter how horrific. I had come to realise that, for whatever reason, this thing could not harm me when my mother was present. I am sure the same would have been said for my father, but as loving as he was, waking him from sleep was almost impossible. After a few months I had grown accustomed to my nightly visitor. Do not mistake this for some unearthly friendship. I detested the thing. I still feared it greatly, as I could almost sense its desire and its personality, if you could call it that. One filled with perverted and twisted hatred, yet longing for me, of perhaps all things. My greatest fears were realised in the winter. The days grew short, and the longer nights merely provided this wretch with more opportunities. It was a difficult time for my family. My grandmother, a wonderfully kind and gentle woman, had deteriorated greatly since the death of my grandfather. My mother was trying her best to keep her in the community as long as possible. However, dementia is a cruel illness, robbing a person of their memories one day at a time. Soon she recognised none of us, and it became clear that she would need to be moved from her house to a nursing home. Before she could be moved, my grandmother had a particularly difficult few nights, and my mother decided that she would stay with her. As much as I loved my grandmother and felt nothing but anguish at her illness, to this day I feel guilty that my first thoughts were not of her, but of what this nightly visitor may do should it become aware of my mother's absence, her presence being the one thing that which I was sure was protecting me from the full horror of this thing's reach. I rushed home from school that day and immediately wrenched the bed sheets and mattress from the lower bunk, removing all the slats and placing an old desk, a chest of drawers, and some chairs which we kept in a cupboard where the bottom bunk used to be. I told my father I was making an office, which he found adorable, but I would be damned if I'd give that thing a place to sleep for one more night. As darkness approached, I lay there knowing my mother was not in the house. I did not know what to do. My only impulse was to sneak into a jewellery box and take a small family crucifix, which I had seen there before. While my family were not very religious, at that age I still believed in God and hoped that somehow this would protect me. Although fearful and anxious, while gripping the crucifix under my pillow tightly with one hand, sleep eventually came, and as I drifted off to dream, I hoped that I would awaken in the morning without incidents. Unfortunately, that night was the most terrifying of all. I woke gradually. The room was once again dark. As my eyes adjusted, I could gradually make out the window and the door and the walls, some toys on the shelf, and even to this day I shudder to think of it, for there was no noise, no rustling of sheets, no movements at all. The room felt lifeless, yet not empty. The nightly visitor, that unwelcome, wheezing, hate-filled thing which had terrorised me night after night, was not in the bottom bunk. It was in my bed. I opened my mouth to scream, but nothing came out. Utter terror had shaken the very sound from my voice. I lay motionless. If I could not scream, I did not want to let it know I was awake. I had not yet seen it, I could only feel it. It was obscured under my blanket. I could see its outline and I could feel its presence, but I dared not look. The weight of it pressed down on top of me, a sensation I will never forget. When I say that hours passed, I do not exaggerate. Lying there motionless in the darkness, I was every bit a scared and frightened young boy. If it had been during the summer months, it would have been light by then, but the grasp of winter is long, and I knew it would be hours before sunrise, a sunrise which I yearned for. I was a timid child by nature, but I reached a breaking point, a moment where I could wait no more, where I could survive under this intimately deviant abomination no longer. Fear can sometimes wear you out, make you threadbare, a shell of nerves, leaving only the slightest trace of you behind. I had to get out of that bed. Then I remembered the crucifix. My hand still lay underneath the pillow, but it was empty. I slowly moved my wrist around to try and find it, minimizing as best I could the sound and vibrations caused, but it could not be found. I had either knocked it off the top bunk, or it had, I could not even bear to think of it, been taken from my hand. Without a crucifix, I lost any sense of hope. Even at such a young age, you can be actually aware of what death is, and intensely frightened of it. I knew I was going to die in that bed if I lay there. I had to leave that room behind, but how? Should I leap out of the bed and hope that I can make it to the door? What if it's faster than me? Or should I slowly slip out the top bunk, hoping that not to disturb my uncanny bedfellow? Realising that it had not stirred when I moved, trying to find the crucifix, I began to have the strangest of thoughts. What if it's asleep? It hadn't so much as breathed since I had woken up. Perhaps it was resting, believing that it had finally got me, that I was finally in its grasp. Or perhaps it was toying with me. After all, it had been doing just that for countless nights. And now, with me under it, pinned against my mattress, with no mother to protect me, maybe it was holding off, savouring its victory until the last possible moment, like a wild animal savouring its prey. I tried to breathe as shallowly as possible, and mustering every ounce of courage I could, I reached over slowly with my right hand and began to peel back my blanket. What I found underneath them covers almost stopped my heart. I did not see it, but as my hand moved the blanket, it brushed against something smooth and cold, something which felt unmistakably like a giant's hand. I held my breath in terror, as I was sure it must now know that I was awake. But nothing. It did not stir. It felt dead. After a few moments I placed my hand carefully further down the blanket and felt a thin, poorly formed forearm. My confidence and almost twisted sense of curiosity grew as I moved down further to a disproportionately larger bicep muscle. The arm was outstretched, lying across my chest, with the hand resting on my left shoulder, as if it had grabbed me in my sleep. I realised that I would have to move this cadaverous appendage if I even so much as hoped to escape its grasp. For some reason, the feeling of torn, ragged clothing on the shoulder of this nighttime invader stopped me in my tracks. Fear once again swelled in my stomach and in my chest as I recoiled my hand in disgust at the touch of a straggled, oily hair. I could not bring myself to touch his face, although I wonder to this very day what it would have felt like. Dear God, it moved. It moved. It was subtle, but its grip on my shoulder and across my body strengthened. No tears came, but God, I wanted to cry. As its hand and arm slowly coiled around me, my right leg brushed along the cool wall, which the bed laid against. Of all that happened to me in that room, this was the strangest. I realised this clutching, rancid thing, which drew great delight from violating a young boy's bed, was not entirely on top of me. It was sticking out from the wall, like a spider striking from its lair. Suddenly its grip moved from a slow tightening to a sudden squeeze. It pulled and clawed at my clothes, as if frightened that the opportunity would soon pass. I fought against it, but its arm was too strong for me. Its head rose, writhing and contorting, under the blanket. I now realised where it was taking me, into the wall. I fought for my dear life. I cried, and suddenly my voice returned to me, yelling, screaming, but no one came. Then I realised why it was so eager to suddenly strike, why this thing had to have me now. Through my window, that window which seemed to represent so much malice from outside, streaked hope, the first rays of sunshine. I struggled further, knowing that if I could just hold on, it would soon be gone. As I fought for my life, the unnervingly parasite shifted, slowly pulling itself onto my chest, its head now poking out from under the blanket, wheezing, coughing, rasping. I do not remember its features. I simply remember its breath against my face, foul and as cold as ice. As the sun broke over the horizon, the dark place, that suffocating room of contempt, was washed, bathed in sunlight. I passed out as its scrawny fingers encircled my neck, squeezing the very life from me. I awoke to my father offering to make me some breakfast. A wonderful sight indeed. I had survived the most horrible experience of my life until then. And now I moved the bed away from the wall, leaving behind the furniture I had believed would stop that thing from taking a bed. Little did I think that it would try to take mine and me. Weeks passed without incident, yet on one cold, frosty night I woke to the sound of furniture where the bunk beds used to be, vibrating violently. In a moment it passed. I lay there sure I could hear a distant wheezing, coming from deep within the wall, finally fading into the distance. I have never told anyone this story before. To this day I still break out in a cold sweat at the sound of bed sheets rustling in the night, or a wheeze brought on by a common cold. And I certainly never sleep with the bed against the wall. Call it superstition if you will, but as I said, I cannot discount confidential explanations such as sleep paralysis, hallucinations, or that of an overactive imagination. But what I can say is this. The following year I was given a larger room on the other side of the house, and my parents took that strangely suffocating place as their bedroom. They said they didn't need a large room, just one big enough for a bed and a few things. They lasted 10 days. We moved on the 11th. Hi guys, Miss Night Terror here. I hope everyone enjoyed my second part of that story, The Bedroom. If you did, then give us a thumbs up. Also, share it with your friends. Come on, you know you want to. Tell your friends about my stories. Get them freaked out like you are. Press that share button. Go on. Also, I do have a Facebook page, so please look me up and like my page. You also get my videos on there and when they're coming out and stuff like that. Also, I'm on Twitter, so go and follow me on Twitter. And I will see you soon. Bye!